Hello, better. Hello everyone, a very good morning to, good afternoon to all dear students. I hope I am visible and audible in the online mode as well. मैं दिख रही हूँ, everything is fine. Mic, अच्छा. जो बच्चे online mode में हैं, please let me know. Then I'll start the class. Is everything fine? Are you able to see me? Good afternoon, Suryavansh. Achha, Janvi, good afternoon, Janvi. Good afternoon, everyone. Am I audible? Am I visible? Yes, correct. Okay. So everything is fine. Prelims का result नहीं आया आज. बड़ी धूमधाम चल रही थी कल की, आने वाला नहीं आया. अब पोस्टपोन हो गया. फिर 10 के बाद 15 हो जाएगा. So we should keep on preparing for mains, okay, or for 2026. Irrespective of when the prelims will result will be released, okay. Do not waste 1 or 2 days, it will cost you a lifetime, okay. So keep on being in the study mode irrespective of whenever the prelims result is declared, okay. Chalo, let's start the discussion for today, okay. In the last class, what did we study? We had a brief overview with respect to the topics and how we should approach them, okay, and how we have to approach the planner in itself, how we have to follow the GEO 300 plus planner. Okay, so today we are starting with the first session, that is populations and settlement. Okay, so session 1, populations and settlement. So I'll be taking up some cases with respect to even paper 2 in integration manner with the paper 1. So you understand the interlinkage as well. Okay, so what is the objective of today's class? How I'm going forward is in the following manner. So see, I'll be giving you additions from current affairs, some recent statistics, data, okay, with respect to population, demography, settlements, etc. Okay, the developments which have taken place in the last 1 or 2 years. Okay, then the method will be as follows. Okay, I'll be taking up certain papers. Okay. Now the discussion is not conventional like from your Majid Hussain, okay, or from your traditional books like Savindra Singh, etc. What I have done is, I have read certain research papers on those topics. Okay, I have read some additional material apart from your traditional books, and those papers are aligned with your syllabus. Okay, so for example, any research paper on migration, we can derive some case study, some data. What are the recent developments in migration across different parts of the world? Or for example, urban sprawl, which is an important part of the syllabus. So how sprawling is developing around different parts of world, and how we can apply our knowledge of the theories, models, population, settlement, etc. in those case studies. Now what we will do is, I'll give you the discussion from those papers, okay, and I will interlink them with data, okay, theories, models, thinkers, okay, from across the syllabus. This is clear? So I'll be taking up those research papers, those case studies, which you can include in the answers in form of value addition, enrichment, and I will interlink them with the different theories, models, thinkers from across the syllabus, okay, and in that manner we will try to cover the most important topics from the perspective of mains. Okay, I am going about in this manner. Okay, this is clear to you, right? And very importantly, if you are not able to recall a linkage, okay, I'll be discussing in a fast pace. If you are not able to recall any theory or model, don't worry at all. Just go back home, open up your foundation notes and revise. So were you able to get the access of perspective classes? Perspective classes मिल गया था? Were you able to cover that? Cover हो गया? नहीं हुआ, क्यों? Okay. Yeah, there was a technical error. On that day there was some technical glitch. Okay, then watch it now. Okay, so cover the perspective unit and today itself cover the population foundation classes notes, whatever you are having, okay. And today I'll be discussing all the current events and the current developments, and the next class for population and settlement will be uploaded tomorrow, okay, which will be in context of question answer discussion, okay, of the all the questions that have been given to you in the planner, okay. Chalo, let's start the discussion now. And also it will be good if you can take up the dictations, because I want you to write. Mains is about answer writing, isn't it so? So थोड़ा लिखने की कोशिश करेंगे, जितना लिखोगे मेंस में उतना अच्छा रहेगा, okay? So keep on jotting down, okay? आप लिखते रहेंगे तो अच्छा रहेगा. चलो, the other students who have joined, we are starting the class now with different case studies, different data examples in context of population geography, and I am also going to interlink some of them with the paper 1 and paper 2 concepts, okay. So the first case study is, this is a research paper which was published in MDPI, the informal city as urban idealization, okay, informal city as urban idealization. Now informal city as urban idealization, okay. Online students, if you will have any difficulty, you can message me, okay, I'll be going through the chat intermittently, okay. Informal city as urban idealization. Now see, what is the context of the paper, okay. Informal city is nothing else but the expansion in form of the urban slums, which is haphazard, okay, which is dynamic, it is not a planned extension, it is kind of a haphazard extension, and that too informal, okay, in form of slums development, okay, in form of slums development. So we can use the synonymous word slums, ghettos, slums, ghettos. We use some other terms, write down the synonymous terms for the slums. Favela, F-A-V-E-L-A, favela, in context of Brazil. Favela in context of Brazil, okay. Barrio, B-A-R-R-I-O, barrio in Spain. B-A-R-R-I-O, barrio in Spain, okay. Musseque in Angola, M-U-S-S-E-Q-U-E, Musseque in Angola, okay. So this informal city can be also said synonymously as clandestine city, okay. Clandestine city, synonymous term, okay. Now when we talk about the informal city, okay, the slums, expansion in form of slums, these are having unhygienic conditions, okay. This is haphazard spontaneous growth, majorly because of the land prices hike in the main CBD, okay. So when there is hike of prices in CBD, this leads to outward expansion. Over migration, out migration. So this is third stage Zelensky, okay, out migration, third stage Zelensky, okay. Why? Because third stage Zelensky kaun sa tha? Rural to urban migration. So here rural to urban migration has, okay, almost peaked here. So there is no more space to live in the main CBD, okay. So outward expansion is there, but in both the forms. One form is towards the edge cities, but that is high class living, high class dwelling. But there is another expansion in form of the informal city, in form of the slums, okay. So here it is possible that you have encroached the place, okay. It may not be even the formal settlements, okay. You have encroached that place, right. So that is the topic of study in this paper, that is Informal city as urban idealization. Okay. Now if we talk about the urban slums, okay, can we say that this is also kind of non-ecumene of Aristotle? Ecumene, non-ecumene, okay. So this is kind of non-habitable, okay. So non-ecumene of Aristotle. Non-ecumene Aristotle. Please Sanjay understand, if I will explain in bilingual, okay, then the problem will be for students who are from South India, okay, or who are from the other parts of India who cannot understand Hindi. I cannot be talking in bilingual. Please try to understand in English only. I have to strictly speak in English. नहीं तो जो बच्चे साउथ से है वो ऐसे ही दिखते रहेंगे, क्या बोल रही है ना, थोड़ा प्रॉब्लम हो जाएगा, फिर मैम की क्लासेस नॉन एक्यूमिन हो जाएंगी, है ना. तो ठीक है. अच्छा, slums and ghettos formation was also talked by David Harvey. Ghettos formation, so write that also. Ghettos formation, David Harvey. And when you write David Harvey, you can always mention social relevance movement. Social relevance movement. Okay. I am anticipating, because this phenomena of urban slums, okay, this outward expansion has much been in news, especially in case of Delhi, NCR, Bengaluru. Now all the flooding that is happening is somehow related with all these phenomena of the urban settlements. Okay, so might be they can ask you a question, you have to use all the given information there, right? Okay, now what is the data? Current data states that, okay, you can write down, by 2050 it is estimated that around 3 billion people might be living in slums, very importantly. But at most important is the fact that a large proportion will be living in Asia, okay. So hence approximately 55% of which, okay, 55% of which might be concentrated in Asia, okay. And very importantly, when we talk about the slums, okay, between 2000 and 2020, although the proportion, okay, as a proportion of percentage, people living in slums have reduced, but the absolute number has increased. Okay, so by 2020 it was 1 billion. Okay, by 2020 it was 1 billion people, and maximum proportion are from 3 regions, that is Sub-Saharan Africa, Central and South Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa, Central and South Asia, and East and Southeast Asia. Okay, Sub-Saharan Africa, Central and South Asia, East and Southeast Asia. A term has been used for this, that is entropic urbanism. So informal city is an outcome of entropic urbanism. Okay, entropic urbanism. So this is urban way of life which is chaotic and dynamic. So in the initial stages it will be chaotic, it will be dynamic. The outward expansion that is not in a concrete manner, because of which only we have the urban slums, right? Eventually it would become more organized. But urban slums, informal expansions are because of the entropic urbanism. Okay, entropic urbanism. Okay, so now see, in this map itself, what do we see? We see that a large proportion of the people living in the urban slums will be from sub-Saharan Africa, will be from Asia, okay, South Central Asia, Eastern, etc. This proportion of the population in the urban slums will be maximum here. Now the question is, why here? यहाँ क्यों होगा बताओ? Why concentration here? Yes, and very good. Population growth will be maximum in these regions only. Correct. Very good. Isn't it so? So maximum population growth will be here, and also it is still under development. Okay. So socio-economic development will happen along with population growth. So write down in bracket, because of expanding population pyramid, expanding population pyramid, expanding population pyramid, okay, along with the socio-economic development, along with socio-economic development, okay. Okay. Very importantly, you can write down a definition given by UN Habitat of slum. So slum is classified by UN Habitat as a contiguous settlement, okay. It is a contiguous settlement in which the inhabitants are characterized by inadequate housing and basic services. Okay. So that is why it is kind of non-ecumene. A contiguous settlement in which inhabitants are characterized by inadequate housing and basic services. And basic services. Now Habitat 3 itself talks about the new urban agenda. Habitat 3 talks about the new urban agenda, okay, where we are focusing on changing our lifestyles to the sustainable development, okay. So you can write down Habitat, okay, you can write down Habitat 3 had given us the new urban agenda which focuses on sustainable development, okay, sustainable development. So the concept of new urbanism comes from here. Some examples, okay, some examples of the cities which have progressed towards new urbanism, okay, like Florida, okay, Florida, comma, Cape Cabarita, Cape Cabarita, Cabarita, C-A-B-A-R-I-T-A, Cabarita, okay, Cape Cabarita, Australia, okay. There are other objectives also of the new urbanism. So another important objective will be transit oriented development, okay, transit oriented development, transit oriented development, transit oriented development, okay. And very importantly, mixed land use, mixed land use, mixed land use, okay. Now in mixed land use, some examples, I will give you some examples. So what is mixed land use, okay. So mixed land use, one can be vertical growth, one can be vertical growth. So in the same building, for example, we are having different stories. One story is for parking, one is for restaurants, one is for office, etc. So vertical land use, and this is successful in case of, for example, Singapore, a very good example, Singapore, okay. So vertical land use, that is an example of mixed land use. Okay. Nowadays when you go towards Noida, Gurgaon, etc., have you seen such high-rise buildings, okay. On ground floor there are markets, some malls, and then As you rise above in the stories, then there are offices, residences also, etc. in the same building. That is a good example of vertical growth. But again, if there are challenges of seismicity, this will not be sustainable. Seismicity agar hoga, it will not be sustainable, okay, if the place is earthquake prone. Now similarly, there is another model, okay. So in the first case, where we are talking about the haphazard growth, the growth cannot be predicted, okay. It is sometimes along an arterial route, possibly because the transportation was well developed here, okay. So growth is more across one channel, across one artery, okay, and has been dispersed across the other arterial routes, okay. So this edge city becomes much more important, but there can be intermittent slumps, okay, intermittent slumps. This is not like a conurbation, no. In conurbation, there will be continuous urbanization, okay. So this is not conurbation, this is sprawling, okay, this is sprawling, and which leads to the development of also informal city, that is slums, okay, that is slums. But one edge city has become more important. Now understand that, for example, is this something that we are witnessing in the metropolitan regions of India currently? Yes, yahi ho raha hai na, around Delhi NCR, around Bengaluru, etc. So for example, in way back in 1980s, had the planners anticipated this kind of growth, what can we do at that time period? What could have been done? अब बताओ मुझे क्या हो सकता था जिससे कि अभी जो growth हो रही है वो ना होती, okay. The growth that is happening currently is haphazard, so that could have been avoided. So what could we have done in 1980s? Planning, very good. Planning how? Satellite towns. So even in Delhi NCR there was a concept of satellite towns, but it didn't fructify as well. So why it was? Because of commercial CBDs. वेरी गुड, यस करेक्ट, प्लानिंग डिवीजन, ये सही बातें हैं, है ना. इसको थोड़ा और टेक्निकली अगर हम बोले, इफ यू टेल इट मोर टेक्निकली, सो व्हाट विल बी द कंसेप्ट, ओके. लेट्स अंडरस्टैंड दैट व्हाई दिस काइंड ऑफ अ ग्रोथ वाज देयर फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, ओके. सो दिस काइंड ऑफ अ ग्रोथ वाज बिकॉज, first of all, the edge city, okay, edge city is not the satellite town, okay. So for example, if this was the satellite town, we failed to make it as important as compared to the CBD, okay. So this satellite town, why it failed was because understand that services are also of different order hierarchy, higher order hierarchy and lower order hierarchy services. So this CBD continues to provide the higher order hierarchy services, and that is why this satellite town, even though it was developed as a satellite town, okay, but it failed to become a magnet, pull magnet. Why? Because it is still not providing the education like IIT Delhi, it is still not providing medical services like AIMS Delhi, right? So higher order hierarchical services couldn't be provided by these satellite towns, simple, okay. So you can write down hierarchical services that were provided by satellite towns. Yes, very good. Sectoral planning is required, correct. Plan development, very good, Janvi, correct, okay. So hierarchical services, okay, provided in satellite towns continue to be of lower order hierarchy, of lower order hierarchy as compared to the CBD, as compared to CBD. Okay. Like IIT Delhi, AIMS Delhi, write down few examples, AIMS Delhi, IIT Delhi, etc. etc. So now see, the outward expansion did happen, but haphazardly first of all. And why was the outward expansion happening? It was not because the outward centers were providing us with the higher order hierarchical services. It was just because we didn't have a place to stay here. Okay, just because the rentals are cheaper there, okay, and because of development of the transportation routes. Metro आ गई ना, इसलिए आप गुड़गांव से दिल्ली जो है अप डाउन कर लेते हो. So Gurgaon is an edge city, so you just up and down from here. Why Jaipur couldn't become such a prominent satellite town? Okay, or for that matter of fact, Ambala, Karnal, all of them have a good potential, but they fail to attract as much population. And why this hierarchical route, why this arterial route has developed much? Because of the transportation route development, that's it. Okay, so this is haphazard growth. So second model can be planned model. Okay, planned model. Planned growth. So we are still on the topic of, okay, multiple land use. Okay, that is vertical growth, mixed land use. Okay, mixed land use. Now what could have been the proposed solution? So for example, if the CBD is expanding, then anticipating that this arterial route will be much better developed because of transportation and communication, I can plan for this region. Okay, so I can plan for this entire region, and I can provide a particular space for residences, okay, offices, okay, so some green space, etc. I am not developing the entire fringe. Okay, synonymously, I am only developing that part of the fringe which possibly will see a higher outgrowth. That could have been done in 1980s, 1990s. Okay, so hence anticipating what is the current rates of migration, what is the current population growth rate, what is the total fertility rate, etc. If I know about the demography, I can anticipate what will be the demography, okay, attributes in the coming future. Okay, so I can anticipate कि अभी current migration rate इतना है तो 10 साल में बढ़ेगा ही. Delhi's importance will grow or not? Yes. So anticipating that, we can develop a particular model. That is, I can plan for fringe, but not synonymously. I can plan for a particular area in the fringe. This is called as city extension model. Even in case of Noida, the problem is water resources. Okay, water is saline there, so it is very difficult to live there. Ecological equilibrium नहीं हुआ ना वहाँ पे, salinity का problem तो है वहाँ पे. और actually वो industrial development था जिसमें हमने ही residences ढूंढ के बना लिए. वहाँ पे भी तो haphazard growth है कि नहीं? So that is the context. Okay. So planned city extension, they are called as planned city extension. Like Denmark, okay. So this is an example of mixed land use, okay? This is not haphazard, this is mixed land use. Now see, Lewis Mumford had written very important line. let's read it. What did Louis Mumford wrote? So Louis Mumford said that ideal cities, okay, he's talking about ideal cities. Ideal cities are enchanted islands, and to remain on them implies losing the ability to face things as they are. Okay, so what does he mean? He means that if in our thought process there are ideal cities, हम मान लेते हैं there are certain cities which are the ideal cities. If you think that any city is ideal city, that would mean that you are living on enchanted islands. Okay, and to remain on them implies losing the ability to face things as they are. In the current case scenario, there are no ideal cities, and if you think you are living on them, then you are losing, okay, the hope to face the reality as it is. In reality, there is no such city as ideal city. All of them are far away from idealism. Okay, so write down what Louis Mumford wrote, because this could be a part of introduction. Just introduce your answer of haphazard growth, okay, haphazard urbanization with the quote of Louis Mumford, that is, ideal cities are enchanted islands, and to remain on them implies losing the ability to face things as they are. We must face the things as they are, because the current case scenario of the cities is that they are not ideal cities. Okay, they are more or less like unplanned, haphazard cities. They are not ideal cities. Okay. So this case study is clear to us. We can use this concept in many questions. Any question on unsustainable urbanization, any question on the slums development, okay, any question on unsustainable urbanization, etc. You can use this concept. Okay. Next, this is again a paper which was published in MDPI. So I am giving you it as a case study. You can use in your answers, but I will also make a synonymous linkage with how this scenario has been happening even in India, okay, because this is the region which is a bit of mountainous region. So what happened here in China, and how we can also synonymously relate it with some of the areas in India, how the development is happening. Okay, so what was the paper? Paper is the spatio-temporal evolution, okay, the spatio-temporal evolution and sustainable development strategy of, okay, Fusio's traditional villages in the Zinan River Basin. Okay, so here the case study area is Zinan River Basin, that is across the two provinces, Anhui province and Zhejiang province. Okay, so write down the area of study are the villages. Area of study are the villages in Anhui, A-N-H-U-I, Anhui, and Zhejiang, Z-H-E-J-I-A-N-G, Zhejiang province. Okay, so across Anhui and Zhejiang province, Zinan River is the area of study. So here some of the traditional villages have been studied. More than 270 villages were studied, and the context is spatio-temporal evolution and sustainable development strategy. Okay, so spatio-temporal evolution and sustainable development strategy. Now see, first of all, the term spatio-temporal evolution, not just the villages here across this system, okay, but across any other area, villages do evolve socio-temporally. Okay, so sorry, spatio-temporally. So spatially and temporally there is an evolution. Simple, spatio and temporally. So these villages, they were studied in the context of spatio-temporal evolution. So how these villages have evolved over a period of time. ठीक है, ये study हुआ है across this particular area of study, across Anhui and Zhejiang province. Now what is the study? Study states that, study क्या बताता है पहले सुन लो. So study states that these villages, they have evolved spatio-temporally over a period of time. Now whenever these villages, they were established during the historical time period, so there were certain reasons associated with their location, and this is kind of a mountainous area also. So here it was also availability of adequate land for the settlements and also availability of water resources. So kind of climatic determinism wherever it was suitable to live. Okay, but now over a period of time these are villages. Okay, so geographical perspective is important, but please remember that it is also socio-cultural perspective. Okay, the concept of topohila, remember, okay, the belongingness to that place, that also evolves over a period of time. Sense of place, very good, yes, correct, है ना. अच्छा अब देखो, so they have evolved over a period of time. Earlier they were located at these locations because of certain deterministic factors, but over a period of time that led to changes in the landscape. So that has evolved over a period of time, right? So villages were traditional in a particular context, but now in the modern case scenario, nowadays villages are being linked to the urban areas. Okay, so they are seeing changes in their cultural perspective and also in their morphology. Okay, these are the two contexts. Now very importantly, learning is that although the changes will happen, okay, that is the reality, but secondly, very importantly, the changes should be sustainable, okay, such that the water resources do not exhaust first of all, okay, because here water resources are extremely important. So the paper suggests certain sustainable solutions, sustainable interventions, how the development should happen across these traditional villages. And across China we know that, across this entire region, okay, that is also got to do much with the sprawling and much to do with the growth pull concept, right? So all of this region that has also grown unsustainably or not? Yes, a lot of development has taken place in context of SEZ and all of that, right? So here the crunch of water resources is very much, okay, बहुत ज़्यादा है यहाँ पे water resources का crunch, because यहाँ पर जो है water resources they have been used unsustainably across the Pacific coast, okay, in most of the areas. So in the coming years, when there will be further interlinkages, transportation routes will be further developed, it will impact their traditional ways of life. Genre Devi, right? Now this is what is happening also across parts of India, especially across parts of Ladakh, okay, parts of Western Himalayas. We have seen this in case of Shimla, okay, water resource crunch and all of that. So this example, how it proposes certain sustainable solutions, could also be replicated across the traditional villages outgrowth in the Indian context. Okay, so write down spatio-temporal evolution and sustainable development strategy, okay, of villages in Zinan River. Okay. So Sonia, you can ask me whatever you are not able to understand in English, but I would continue in English only. ठीक है, हिंदी में बोलने में थोड़ा प्रॉब्लम हो जाएगा, कुछ बच्चों को नहीं समझ में आएगा. Okay, now see, so you can mention that the traditional villages, okay, so they are having the context of topohila, okay, sense of place, belongingness, टोपोहिला, कोई थिंकर याद आ रहा है? वेरी गुड, ये फुतवान, वेरी गुड, कल्चरल लैंडस्केप, वेरी गुड, करेक्ट, यस, वेरी गुड, है ना. सो ये फुतवान, even we can use Kalos or cultural landscape. Okay, so this is kind of rural, okay, urban, so rural urban integration in contemporary times. We are discussing the spatio-temporal pattern. So here both geography, okay, so kind, location, resources, okay, and culture are important perspectives. So can I use planning principles also for the development of such regions? Yes, we can use planning principles. So we can use planning principle of, for example, okay, space-time continuum. Space-time continuum can be used. Yes, that is what is spatio-temporal. Space-time, spatio-temporal, correct? I can also use horizontal unity. These are the most applicable ones. Okay. So in context of geographical perspective, it was more of determinism. Okay. And here the cultural aspect. Genre Devi has become more important. Okay. So when I use determinism, I can mention Al-Idarsi. But when we are talking about human adaptations, okay, human adaptations, so another context can be human adaptations. When we are talking about genre Devi, we can also talk about human adaptations. So we can take the context of Al-Masudi. So I am giving reference of those thinkers in whose works there are certain traces of determinism, human adaptations, etc. That's it. That is what is required in your answers. Okay. So the paper proposes solutions in form of watershed based development. Paper says that the future development should be watershed based development. So the solutions proposed are watershed based development. Watershed based development. Okay. Although there have been human adaptations, although we have modified the landscape now, right? But still, very importantly, we must remember that the local resource base, that is limited or not? Yes. So taking into consideration the upper limits that we are having, paper suggests that whatever growth should be there, taking into consideration the local resources. Okay. So the paper proposes again organic unity. That is taking into consideration development but along with ecology. So organic unity. So when we talk now about organic unity, what you can mention? You can mention organic unity, Humboldt and Ritter. Very good. Humboldt and Ritter. Now can you see how many linkages we are able to develop? Just if we are able to recall the concepts and the thinkers, that's it. Okay. I hope the online students are able to keep up the pace. Now see, similar growth that had happened here, okay, that is also happening across parts of the Western Himalayas. especially we are concerned with those areas which are ecologically very fragile. Okay, so rain shadow areas like Ladakh, they are facing a paradox. One is economic growth and second is ecological equilibrium. Okay, so here this was a recent study which was in news, that is rapid urbanization and climate changes threaten the groundwater resources in Ladakh. So Ladakh, I am going to make a linkage between the previous study and how it is also applicable here in case of Ladakh. Okay, so we can use that model either in paper 1 or in paper 2, you can use the same terms. Okay, so in Ladakh we are facing a paradox, that is economic growth versus ecological equilibrium. A problem with Ladakh is that is there are much higher proportion of tourists each and everywhere here as compared to the local population. Okay, so the local population here, that is mostly concentrated around Leh, but there are other villages also where the population is there, but it is scarce. Okay, here it is form of the settlements which are dispersed settlement. Okay, so here we have the dispersed scattered settlements. When we are talking about Ladakh, so this will be Rostov stage, Rostov stage, Rostov stage 1 and 2. Rostov stage is early Rostov stage. Okay, so Rostov 1 and 2. Now here mostly the economic prospects are around Leh, that is in terms of tourism. Okay, some bit of small scale industries which have started around woolen textiles, okay, etc. But generally here the economic prospects, they are concentrated around Leh, but there are other villages also which have the tourism perspectives, but maximum tourists they visit here, okay, which causes undue pressure on the limited water resources here. Okay, so water resources here are limited, and this is a rain shadow area. So precipitation is very less, 15-20 centimeters like that only throughout the year. So this is having challenges of climatic determinism. Okay, climatic determinism. So the challenges of this region, this can be a case study. Okay, this can be a case study you can mention. There are many times questions around hill area development. There are questions on unsustainable development where you can give in context of hill area. Okay, so here there has been rapid urbanization, impact on the water resources, influx of tourists, nowadays the tourists are also coming to stay here. Okay, for certain part of the season they are here for 6 months. Okay, this is kind of a seasonal migration also you can say. But the major problem is limited economic pursuits, limited economic opportunities. Agriculture, tourism. Now what we are witnessing is okay, land use modifications. LULC modifications, okay, how the land is being used, that is now changing. So agricultural land is now being converted into tourist hotspots, okay. So we are making restaurants, homestays, etc. So that can also cause challenges with context of food security. Okay. But very importantly, we are forgetting that there are limits to growth. So synonymous to the case study of China, this region had its own genre de vie, ways of living, okay. Here there are some of the tribes who have been habitating this region from very long time period, like the Changpa tribes. They have their own traditional ways of life, okay, like the Changpas. So opening up of the tourism routes, that has impacted their lifestyle prominently, but also that is impacting the ecologically fragile area, okay. The biodiversity here, that is very different from what is found in the other places. So for example, in the recent years we have seen, okay, that black-necked cranes which migrate here seasonally, okay. In some parts of Pangong Somorari lakes, there are small villages like Hanle, okay, etc., where the black-necked cranes, they seasonally migrate each year, and then here they breed and they nest, okay, and then they take their individual, जो छोटा बच्चा है उसको लेके they go back, okay. They migrate sometimes from Bhutan and all that area, they migrate seasonally. But nowadays, because of the influx of tourists, okay, so there has been reduction of they migrate in pairs, okay. So the pairs who used to migrate to India, they are reducing in number, and that is also impacting their breeding. Nowadays hardly 1 or 2 offspring they survive each year annually, okay. So that has been the impact on the biodiversity. And last year, unfortunately, okay, now Hanle has been open to tourists. वो observatory है ना, Hanle में news में था, है ना, तो वहाँ पर tourist का influx इतना बढ़ गया है, it has increased tremendously, that last year unfortunately there were some incidences when these eggs of the black-necked cranes, okay, they were destroyed because of the tourist influx like that. So that is very unfortunate, okay. These are very ecologically fragile regions. So this is one case where you can relate what has been studied in case of China here. Okay. So you can see that in context of the tourist units, that has increased tremendously, okay. Just because you need to make your answer a bit more geographical, what you can do is you can draw a small map, okay, mention few tourist hotspots. So this is Leh, okay. Nowadays lot of tourists that has increased, maybe draw this, okay, and I will mention on the other map. This is a more detailed map, okay. So Leh, okay, so Leh, so this is one region, okay. This is another region, this is Korzok, this is Hanle, okay. I'll show you map. It is like this. And generally also tourists increasing from Kulu Valley. And recently also one of the passes, okay, that was made an all weather tunnel, याद आ रहा है, connecting Srinagar towards Leh, Srinagar towards Leh, कौन सा था लास्ट ईयर न्यूज में था ना, जोजिला, वेरी गुड, जोजिला, जवाहर टनल बच्चों वो तो जम्मू को कश्मीर से कनेक्ट करती है ना, कश्मीर को जो है कनेक्ट करता है मतलब श्रीनगर को लेह से, जोजिला, ओके. So now the influx of tourists will increase even in the winter season. So this can be a case study in the hilly area settlements as well. These are hilly area settlements, right? Okay. Next, there was recently a paper, okay, here some new terms were appearing, so I thought I must discuss this. The paper was published again in MDPI, smart grids in the context of smart cities. Okay, smart grids in the context of smart cities. Now many times they have asked question on smart cities, okay, and a new concept that is around smart grids in context of smart cities had appeared, okay. So possibly we can include these terms in our answers. Smart grids in context of smart cities. Okay. So smart cities, the context of limits to growth. Why in the first place we require smart cities, limits to growth? There is ecological equilibrium. There is ecological equilibrium, okay. Limits to growth or new Malthusianism. Or new Malthusianism, okay. Plateau. Man can act as an agent of change, okay. So plateau's idea can be possibilistic in nature, okay. So you can give a context of plateau. Even reckless. Reckless also acknowledges the role of man, okay, in changing the external environment. So European Commission defines smart city as a place where traditional networks and services, okay, traditional networks and services are made more efficient. So we are not talking about replacing the traditional networks and services, okay. It's not that in Varanasi we need to change the main service which is being provided there. We just need to change how it is being provided, okay. Are made more efficient with the use of digital and telecommunication technologies. So here the focus is majorly on the Schumpeterian growth, okay. For the benefit of its inhabitants and the businesses. So here we are also talking about economic prosperity, okay. So here the major focus is on sustainable energy. Okay. So how we are producing energy, that should be sustainable. Integration of the ICTs in the energy development. Okay. Integration of ICTs, and hence that can also help us integrate the renewable energy in the grid. Okay. Renewable energy in the grid. So energy that is affordable. Okay. We are talking about energy security, but from the perspective of development technologically. So sustainability, security and affordability. We are talking about these three important perspectives: sustainability, affordability and security. Okay. So it talks about improvement in quality of life. Okay. That is increase in social capillarity, which is fine. Okay. But along with that, efficient resource usage. Okay. So smart grid can also be said to be a subcomponent of the smart city. Smart city can also be a subcomponent of the smart grid. Okay. So they are interlinked. In what manners? We can write down some component. Okay. So smart city, that focuses on e-governance. Okay. That focuses on better urban space management. Okay. It talks about socio-cultural infrastructure. Okay. You can just mention some of the important components of the smart city. Okay. That is focuses on e-governance, focuses on socio-cultural infrastructure, urban space management, and along with that digitalization. Okay. In context of transportation, in context of the transportation and communication, in context of the health services, in context of education, etc. Okay. In context of traffic surveillance. Okay. In context of traffic surveillance, so smart mobility can be there. Okay. But along with smart grid, it focuses on very importantly, okay, because here we are talking about efficient energy development. Okay. So here again we are talking in the context of, first of all, sustainable transportation system. Why smart grid and smart city in coherence are required? For sustainable transportation development. Secondly, energy efficiency. Sustainable energy and energy efficiency. Next, very importantly, we are talking about smart buildings. Okay, smart buildings. And very importantly, we are talking about automation and control. And we are also talking about very important term, prosumers, who are producing and consuming energy. Prosumers. Okay, increasing number of prosumers who are generating and consuming the energy parallelly. Okay. Now, such systems can be beneficial across the different regions in a varied manner. In high altitude areas, it can lead to the sustainable development of tourism, ecotourism. In the coastal areas, it can lead to sustainable, okay, sustainable development of industrial hubs, okay, like fisheries, okay, like industries based on the products from seaweed, okay, seaweed. In the tribal location, it can lead to the development of products, niche products on the basis of, okay, which are found in that area, like silk production, okay, like agricultural mechanization, agrotechnology. Okay. So you can give a regional perspective to this particular paper. Now the paper mentions where such models have been replicated. For example, first is Masdar Metropolis, UAE. Okay, Masdar Metropolis, UAE. So here, very importantly, this is an important case study because it is now relying much on solar energy development, almost 80%. okay, of the consumption that is coming from solar. Okay. So it almost relies entirely on solar and along with that wind. So reduction in CO2 emissions. Okay. But along with that, from the context of settlements, it is focusing on, okay, building orientation and shapes. And very importantly, it is focusing on, okay, the lighting system, the shades, etc. Okay. Promotion of air circulation. So basically like green buildings concept. Okay. But the energy development is now from solar and wind. So this is one example. Okay. So 80% it is coming from solar energy now. Okay. So this has been possible by the rooftop system, rooftop solar panels. Okay. Next is Berlin, Germany. Very importantly, government introduced the concept of smart city, and the municipal authorities identified certain locations. These 10 locations were called as the future sites, okay, which will be the future smart cities, and they are called as, okay, Zukun Sorte. Okay. So ZUKUN FTSORTE. ZUKUN FTSORTE. These were called as the future sites, okay, of the smart cities. So these were 10 cities which were designated. Okay. And Germany, we know, okay, is way ahead in terms of the solar energy development. Wind energy is focusing a lot on renewable energy development. Okay. So this is another example you can quote in context of draw small maps. फटाफट मैप बनाते रहो साइड में, है ना. जब भी कोई केस स्टडी लिख रहे हैं, box it, make a map, small map here. That's it. 3-4 lines, that is sufficient. Okay. Another example is Barcelona smart city. So Barcelona smart city के बारे में पढ़ा होगा शायद कभी. Barcelona smart city. Okay. Barcelona smart city, again it is focusing on e-governance, okay, smart lighting, energy self-sufficiency, smart mobility. Okay. So it is focusing on the smart grid integration in the concept of smart city. Now very importantly, when we talk about Barcelona, okay, so Barcelona, Catalonia. Okay. So Barcelona, Catalonia. Now this entire coast, are we aware of some important development in the context of the haphazard urban growth? ये एरिया के बारे में कुछ पता है आप लोगों को? ये एरिया कौन सा है बच्चों? ये कंट्री कौन सी है बच्चों? स्पेन है. ठीक है, सब जगह में है, सो तो नहीं गए? कहीं लंच वंच करके आए, खूब बिरयानी और क्या होता है मटर पनीर, बटर पनीर, और क्या मैडम बता रही है बार्सिलोना और कैटेलोनिया. मस्त नींद आ रही थी मुझे. हाँ, ये रीजन, एनी आइडिया दिस रीजन? वॉल्केनिक इरप्शंस और कुछ इन टर्म्स ऑफ ह्यूमन कंटेक्स्ट में बताओ. हाँ ठीक है, ट्रैवल के लिए. और बताओ, थोड़ा और पास आ रहे हो. गुड. एनी आइडिया अबाउट दिस रीजन? Why in the past few years this has been in news? Catalonia, okay, Spain, yes, ठीक है, January, correct. Why this has been in news? Any idea in the past few years? This entire area, Catalonia, Valencia, Murcia, Andalusia, this belt, ये कौन सा रीजन है बच्चों? मेडिटेरेनियन. So क्यों है ये न्यूज में? कुछ आइडिया नहीं? कभी पढ़ा है ये न्यूज़ में? नहीं. वो इस बार प्रीलिम्स में आया था, मैच द फॉलोइंग, वो ठीक लगाए थे. इटली स्पेन वाला की गलत हो गया था. सही था, तभी तो मेंस की तैयारी कर रहे हैं, वरना तो अभी हम पकौड़े तल रहे होते, है ना. यहाँ कौन बैठा हुआ था क्लास में? बताओ. नो आइडिया? कुछ आइडिया नहीं है, है ना. ठीक है. नाउ सी, this region in the past few years has witnessed very rapid urbanization. Although this cannot be synonymously, okay, taken into consideration like the urbanization of India. India की तो एक सिटी इनकी कंट्री के बराबर पॉपुलेशन है, वैसा नहीं है. But in the past few years there has been very rapid population growth, resulting into, okay, the development of some of the metropolitan regions here in terms of the population growth, first of all. And secondly, because of this haphazard growth in context of population and industries, this has resulted into phenomena of urban sprawl here. So urban sprawl has, okay, started from this region which is connecting Valencia, Murcia, Catalonia, this entire region. Okay, so this is witnessing urban sprawl. In the past 1 decade, this has become an important region in that context. Okay. The Mediterranean coast. So that is why this concept of development of Barcelona as smart city has come up. Okay. That is why different countries, okay, across Western Europe specifically are focusing much on the development of renewable energy. When we talk about renewable energy, okay, renewable energy, we can talk about the thinkers like Al-Masudi. So Al-Masudi had mentioned about renewable energy development. He talked about wind energy as a potential for the usage in terms of the energy. Okay. So this is clear to us. Yes, correct, Janvi, very good. Because of urban sprawl, correct. Okay. Now see, this was a recent study which was published for India. For Indian context also similar scenario is witnessed. Okay. That is, currently we are going to witness, okay, an increase in the socio-economic development. Okay. There will be a rapid growth socio-economically. Now there are two case scenarios why this is happening. First case scenario is that economic growth will be there, okay, because of demand factor, okay, and because of the rising per capita incomes, there would be economic growth. Secondly, we are also witnessing a decline in the fertility. Okay, so they are complementary to each other in a manner. Kaise? Dekho. So TFR rates, they are declining. And secondly, okay, the per capita incomes, okay, that have increased. Okay, total fertility has decreased, per capita incomes increased. So this can be interlinked with an important concept of social capillarity. Social capillarity, we remember Arsene Dumont, yaad aa raha hai? Social capillarity. Arsene Dumont. Now in the context of social capillarity, what was the idea of Arsene Dumont? Okay. So the idea of Arsene Dumont was that, Arsene Dumont का idea क्या था पहले समझ लेते हैं, ठीक है? So idea of Arsene Dumont was that as our incomes increase, okay? So for example, earlier you were earning 10,000 rupees. Now you earn 1 lakh rupees per month. Your income did increase, right? So that also impacts the fertility rates. How does it impact? So whenever our incomes increase, so a thought process of the person is that now I have risen in the social order. Okay, पहले मेरे को इतना स्ट्रगल हो रहा था, 10 रुपए के पकौड़े खाने हैं तो सोचना पड़ रहा था, है ना, उससे बार्गेन कर रहे हैं हम, तो है ना, 20 रुपए के पकौड़े 10 के दे दे, 10 के दे दे, ऐसे हो रहा है. अब आराम से मैकडी में जाके बर्गर खा रहे हैं, है ना, अब कोई टेंशन नहीं है, हम आराम से ऊबर को हम बुक करते हैं, हम उसमें जाते हैं, अपना पकौड़े वकौड़े खा के बर्गर वर्गर खा के आते हैं, है ना, लेजर, हम लेजरली अब लाइफ को जी रहे हैं. Now when your status in social order it increases, ठीक है, then what happens? Then your tendency is that I want to maintain that social order. अब मैं नीचे नहीं जाना चाहता. Now I'm earning 1 lakh rupees. I don't want to earn now 50,000 rupees because my expenditures have increased. How can I maintain that social order? I can maintain that social order maybe by having lesser number of children or by having no children. So fertility will automatically reduce because of increase in the incomes. Okay, So your income increased. When your income increased, then also you started owning an individual mobile. Okay, पहले क्या होता था, एक ही लैंडलाइन फोन लगा होता था, है ना, पूरे घर वाले एक ही फोन यूज करते थे, जैसे ही घंटे बजी सब भाग के मुझे मुझे बात करनी है, मुझे बात करनी है, अब कोई क्रेज नहीं है, सबके पास अपना इंडिविजुअल मोबाइल है, दो दो मोबाइल है ना. अब दो दो मोबाइल है तो क्या एनर्जी कंजम्पशन बढ़ गया? इंडिविजुअली वी वांट एसी इन ईच एंड एवरी रूम. ओके, so did our expenditure increased? Did our emissions increased? Yes. Now we want an individual vehicle. मैं मेट्रो से क्यों ट्रेवल करूँ? मैं 2 लाख रुपए कमाता हूँ, मेट्रो में क्यों जाऊँ मैं? मेरा स्टेटस पता है क्या है ना? तो मुझे अपनी कार चाहिए, ठीक है, आई वॉन्ट टू ट्रेवल इन अ कार. So that is because of an increase in the social status, in the capillarity, rise in the social order. Okay, so social capillarity are seen Dumont. ठीक है. So when my income increased, my expenditure increased, okay, and generally it is also increasing my emissions. My per capita consumptions increased. Okay, my per capita consumption increased. Okay, so eventually what would happen? We are moving away from status of underdevelopment towards developing and highly developed. Okay, now in these countries which are higher in orders of HDI, ठीक है, higher economic development है, in that case scenario we see generally a rise in the emissions and also rise in the per capita emissions. Okay, not only in the terms of absolute number but also in terms of the per capita emissions बढ़ जाता है, right? Now currently when we see in case of India, okay, so this is energy consumption and HDI. So what do we see when we compare it with some other countries? Currently the energy consumption might be low, but it is definitely going to increase because of social capillarity as in Dumont, and hence we would require such concepts like the smart grids and the smart city concepts integrated with the smart cities. Okay, so just one line maybe you can mention that as the per capita incomes would increase, okay, and the population growth also is happening currently in India. Okay, the electricity consumption in terms of per capita consumption would increase. Okay, in terms of per capita consumption would increase. Okay, so UN World Population Prospects has mentioned that, okay, world population might peak by 2050. Okay, might peak by 2050s, 60s, so it will be somewhere around 9-10 billion. That are the projections with respect to the population growth. Okay, so currently it has surpassed the 8 billion mark, around 8.2 it is currently, so it might, okay, reach up to 9 or 10 billion, but after that it might peak here. Okay, it might be peaking here. Why? Because China's population growth has already started declining. Okay, in case of India, fertility rates are now below 2.1. Okay, okay, but very importantly, okay, this demographic transition which is happening currently, this 20-30 years, the energy consumption are going to increase definitely, and because of large base in India, that will increase the emission. So that is why the need for smart grids, concept like smart grids. Okay. Now very importantly, this article had been published, okay, across various newspapers, okay, in the previous year. Very important article. We would try to understand demographic transition, some theories in interlinkage with this concept, okay, and I would also link here the context of India. So the article is Japan inching toward having just one child left by 2720. Okay. Now see, we know the context of Japan, DTM stage 4. Okay. Or some parts can be even in 5. Okay. So there are forecasts that the Japan's population, this can be an ideal case study in any question on population geography. Wherever there is a context of demographic transition, this is an ideal case study. Okay. So as per the prospects, Japan's population is forecast to decline by approximately 30%. Okay. Dropping to 87 million by 2070. These are the forecasts for the population of Japan. Okay. And very importantly, the rate of aging population is very fast here because fertility rates are very less. So hence the proportion of aging population as a composition of the total population is going to increase further. Okay. So Japan's demographic crisis will be exacerbated because of the aging population. Okay. That is, with over 29% of its citizens aged 65 or more. Very important point. Okay. So what is happening? TFR rates, they are very low. Okay. So birth rate is very less. Life expectancy is very high. Population growth rate very less. So you can always draw, okay, this kind of the population pyramid. Okay. So this is the population pyramid, inverted pyramid. Okay. And as compared with Angola, so we know the case scenario. Why this pyramid in Angola? Because of the rapid population growth. Fertility rate are high. Okay. But here the population growth is inverted pyramid. So you can add the concept of population pyramid. Now as the aging population increases, there is a decline in the population growth rate, lesser number of children are being born, there would come a time when there is only one child left. These are the projections. Okay. So very importantly, we are talking about decline in the labor force. Okay. So when we are talking about decline in the labor force, we are talking about a decline in the number of working hands. Okay. Yeah, number of working hands, the concept used by Marx. Okay. Yes, very good Ganesh, correct, inverted pyramid. Correct, this is an inverted pyramid, DTM stage 4-5, okay? Correct. Now there are some additional scenarios to the aging population of Japan which you can quote in any question wherever the question is on elderly population. Aata hai na kai baar, senile, elderly are all synonymous words. Okay. Now first of all, when we talk about elderly population, increase in the elderly population. Okay. Now in the urban areas, what is happening is, this has been witnessed in some of the cities of Japan, okay, that the urban population, wherever there is an increase in the elderly population, there it is becoming unsustainable, okay, to also maintain the economic prospects of that city. Why? Because there is decline in the demand. जो services है, उसका decline हो गया ना, समझ में आ रहा है? For example, every day, okay, this youth population, they migrate. on a daily basis. Okay, for example, from the edge cities towards the urban core, like that, in those areas where there is still demographic dividend. So here the demand for services, that is decreasing. There is demand for services, but for healthcare, okay, pensions, etc. But the demand for the services like schooling, okay, like education, that is reducing. So that it is becoming very difficult to sustain that city economically. So economic viability is reducing in such areas. समझ में आ रहा है? तो मेट्रो के लिए डिमांड नहीं है, ठीक है, और उसके लिए भी इनको क्या चाहिए होगा, रैम्स वुड बी रिक्वायर्ड फॉर द मेट्रोस, ओके, स्पेशल prospects would be required for making that infrastructure elderly friendly. So hence in some cities it is becoming even economically difficult to, okay, make them viable. So economic viability is being impacted. In some sectors which require labor force like agriculture, okay, construction, etc., there can be severe, okay, impact on the availability of the labor force. ठीक है. Now see, what is this heading stating? World Population Day. Okay, there will be 700 million fewer people by the end of this century than previous estimated. Okay, this is the same article which is synonymous with the previous article. Increase in the elderly population. GS1 में पूछा ना last year, demographic winter पूछ लिया था, है ना? So similar context, increase in elderly population. Okay, maybe just you can mention one line, that's it. Such type of data and statistics that is very much required in your answers for a good introduction. Now when we have this discussion, this is a simple decline in total fertility rate, okay. So this can be linked with different population theories, okay, this can be linked with different population theories. Let's write all the population theories that we can relate it with, okay. So first is DTM, okay, demographic transition model, we can relate it with DTM. Castro protein consumption theory. Whenever there is an increase in the protein consumption, fecundity reduces. Okay. So if you don't know, just write down one line in the bracket so you are not able to forget it later on. So whenever the protein consumption increases in the diet, the fecundity reduces. Protein consumption, fecundity reduces. Simple. Consumption theory, okay, by Castro. Protein consumption theory by Castro. Next, I have already told you, you can mention Arsene Dumont, social capillarity. Sadler's idea, that is fecundity is inversely proportional to, okay, the condensation numbers. Okay. So what does it mean? It means, okay, So for example, initially the population is less, okay. So population would increase until and unless their numbers have increased in such a number, okay. That is, there has been an increase in the number, absolute numbers, population ka number बढ़ गया है, okay. So there has been condensation now. So when the numbers would increase, automatically the fecundity would reduce, okay. So where the numbers are less, in the primitive societies, the numbers are less, right? But then the numbers increase in agrarian societies, okay. But when their condensation has increased, their numbers have increased, then automatically it would start reducing. Now this will be in industrial societies, okay. So from primitive to agriculture to industrial societies. So the condensation would, no, he didn't give, no, he didn't mention, नहीं, नहीं. बट आप अपना कॉमन सेंस लगाओ, जैसे कि हम बोल सकते हैं ये कंडेंसेशन नंबर कब तक इंक्रीज हुआ, जैसे इंडिया के केस में 60s 70s वो वाला टाइम पीरियड है ना, 80s के बाद थोड़ा थोड़ा डिक्लाइन स्टार्टेड, and by 1990s we were acknowledging that the population growth was reducing. It is increasing, yes. No, he hasn't mentioned about a particular number, ठीक है, but आप समझो इसको, with the development in the society, okay, it would reduce eventually with the condensation of the number, okay. Equal to हाँ, absolute number, ठीक. So protein consumption theory, double day theory इसी के synonymous है, I think you must be knowing double day theory, okay. So write down double day theory. Population increase would reduce as there is an increase in the food supply, okay, as there is increase in the food supply. As there is increase in the food supply, okay. Now more or less when we are talking about these theories, so which regions are we talking about, okay. Industrial societies, protein intake is increasing. Protein intake कहाँ बढ़ता है, अभी थोड़ी जब हम 20-20 रुपए की लड़ाइयाँ कर रहे हैं, प्रोटीन इंटेक कहाँ बढ़ेगा, मीट कौन खाएगा, चिकन पनीर कौन खाएगा, जब पैसे होंगे, है ना, तो वो कहाँ होंगे, जब हमारा पर कैपिटा इनकम बढ़ेगा. So that is later stages of DTM, okay. Socio-economic status increases, fertility reduces, so that is what synonymously the other theories mention. ये सभी थ्योरी वही बात कर रहे हैं, ठीक है, चाहे डबल डे की बात हो, चाहे कैसरो की बात हो, all of them are synonymously saying one thing, okay. So whenever there is a question on increase in the elderly population, now we are very clear that these countries in Western Europe, in North America, they are in the later stages of development. So protein consumption और ये सब लग जाएगा, social capillarity higher order, right, okay. And that is what is going to happen in case of India also, okay. So that is what I have told you already, okay. So very importantly, in 63 nations it has already peaked, and in the other countries the population peak would happen now, okay. So hence what would happen, there will be a rise in the elderly population, simple, okay. Now next is in the context of a particular region which remains in news more or less always, and very importantly this can be used as a case study in context of the different demographic attributes. Whenever there is a question on demographic attributes, you must have ready-made examples, case studies from sub-Saharan Africa, another contrasting example from North America, okay, from Singapore, or from those areas which are relatively better developed. In case of India, you must have ready-made examples, case studies from Kerala versus Bihar, Kerala versus UP, okay, North-South divide, etc. So one case is from, okay, so 5.5 million infants in eastern Southern Africa suffer from undernutrition. So this was a recent data which was published by UNICEF. Okay. Now this region itself, that is Horn of Africa, so other aspects remain true, okay, that is underdeveloped, okay, early stages of Rostov, there are deterministic challenges, so sometime or the other there is a drought here, okay, so deterministic challenges are there. But very importantly, when we are talking about this region, okay, I can also use another theory, okay. Now let's think from, okay, the perspective of world on a larger scale. So we are talking about this particular region. Can I put this under a particular category, that is from the consideration of world system theory, core periphery model? Yad aa raha hai? Core periphery model, core periphery, semi periphery, right? So I can take it in the consideration of periphery. So core periphery का ये periphery है, okay. So Wallerstein model. Core periphery, I can use Wallerstein here, okay. So world system theory, Wallerstein model, okay. We can also say that these regions can be related from the concept of have and have nots. किसने दिया था concept? Marx, very good. Have and have nots, Marx. So the hunger situation, it impacts the different demographic attributes, okay. So because of which the rates of anemia, okay, undernutrition, stunting, wasting, etc., that remains, okay, perennially higher here. Whenever there is an essay आता है ना कई बार इसी थीम के ऊपर, है ना, डेवलपमेंट के ऊपर थीम आ ही जाती है कभी ना कभी. Even in geography there are questions on human development. Always use these contrasting case studies, okay. In essay you will not mention this as case study, just write in the flow of the essay. But in the mains answer, geography or GS, you can mention all of these examples. These are ready-made answers only. Just write one paragraph on sub-Saharan Africa, one on Europe, one on this and that, your answer is ready. That would also give the regional perspective, okay. That would also give the human development regional perspective, that's it. You need 2-3 points on data and your work is done, okay. So what is the data? Data states that approximately 5.5 million, as I've told you, suffer from undernutrition. Very importantly, wasting, okay, wasting is prevalent, okay, and which is highest in case of Ethiopia. Write down one data, which is around 10%. For Ethiopia, wasting is around 10%. You can always mention some data in your essays, okay. Stunting is also variable, but very high across some countries, okay. So 25% in Burundi and Madagascar, okay, and underweight also around 13% in Burundi and Madagascar. So stunting, wasting, underweight, this is high in this region. Yes, Horn of Africa is important geostrategically, but with respect to development it has relatively suffered, okay. 1/3 of the women in this region are, okay, anemic, whereas around 15-20% are underweight, okay. So all of this also impacts the fertility rates. This also impacts, okay, the reproduction in women, and will also impact stunting and wasting further, okay, when the children are born. So all of this is interlinked, and this is also interlinked with the literacy rates and the awareness, empowerment of women across this region. Very important, okay. All of this is interlinked, bachcho. Wherever generally the literacy rate, empowerment of women increases, there we see a sudden decline in the fertility rates. There is also an increase in the women participation rate, although it comes after a bit of hesitation, but it would come, okay. So immediately as the fertility rate reduces, more number of women can now be engaged in the labor force. So labor force participation rate also tends to increase, okay. So just few data to enrich your answers, that's it. So such questions can also come in your economic geography, okay. Economic geography में भी पूछ सकता है, okay. Now next, this is a case study with respect to, okay. So generally sometimes I have seen there is a question around pastoralism और वो वाले context में भी आ जाता है, ठीक है. So this is the case study with respect to Mongolia. So Mongolian herders, okay, impact of a new coal highway to China, okay. So this is a case study with respect to the impact which there will be on the Mongolian herders, okay, Mongolian herders. So a new highway is proposed which will lead to exports of coal from Mongolia, and here there is presence of the indigenous tribal communities, okay. Those are the herders who have been living in these areas from a historical time period, okay. So they have their own ways of life. So these herders, they face the challenges that would impact this landscape, okay, this cultural landscape which has developed over a period of time, okay. So which will impact their livestock and impacting their ways of life. That is John Redivy. So there was reference of tribes in the works of Hecatius, okay, Hecatius. So such challenges are also faced by tribes of India. You can use such case studies, okay. So Hecatius had mentioned about tribes. In works of Hecatius we find the reference of tribes, okay. Such environmental degradation that is environmental degradation caused by anthropogenic modifications was also reported by Humboldt, although he was studying some other region, but Humboldt also mentions about environmental degradation because of anthropogenic modifications. So you can mention Humboldt, okay. But such developments of the highways etc. for coal exploration, that would also lead to further push-pull migration. Okay. So you can draw a small map, mention this province, that is Omnogovi province, okay. This is Omnogovi province. Omnogovi province. So here the pastoralists, they are protesting, okay. And Tavan Tolgoi coal mine is the area which is proposed to be developed, okay. Tavan Tolgoi coal mine. So it will impact this area where the pastoralists, they are living with their livestock. Okay. So Shushma, you can continue with the class and maybe you can connect to me after the class. Okay, connect to me after the class. Okay, on the official number of Geography Optional. You can connect with me after the class. I'll be taking up your queries. Now similarly, China's another area of development has been around this area. China has been very much interested to develop this area, or that may that be the CPEC area, etc. Okay. So similar report was there in context of this area where the development by China has been recently quite unsustainable. Okay. So this can be another example that China's development in Mekong area is impacting the entire landscape and the biodiversity. Okay. The entire landscape and the biodiversity. Okay. Now next, this is very important case. Okay. So let's read this case study. Urban sprawl brings new challenges to Tanzania's largest city. Okay. That is Dar es Salaam. Okay. So Dar es Salaam, which is witnessing urban sprawling. So this is case study of Tanzania. We'll learn some important terms from here, and this can be used in any question even on India. Okay. Even in questions of India. Okay. So Tanzania, Dar es Salaam. Okay. You can draw just a small map. So there has been rapid urban growth. Okay. Built up areas have increased tremendously. So this is Dar es Salaam. You can see in maroon the areas which have been shown are the areas where the urban growth has been very rapid. Okay. So just draw Tanzania and Dar es Salaam. That's it. Okay. Just mention Dar es Salaam. Okay. Now urban sprawling. So urban sprawling. So urban sprawling you can relate it with. Okay. So sprawling. Multi-nuclei model. Multi-nuclei model. Okay. Multi-nuclei model. Expansion of the CBD. Expansion of the CBD, right? Now very importantly, in case of Dar es Salaam, the issue has been further manifested because of the extreme rural to urban migration. Okay. So rural to urban migration. Zelensky stage 3. So this has resulted into congestion. Okay. Congestion. Overcrowded public transportation systems. Okay. Overcrowded public transportation systems. Overburdened healthcare systems, etc. Okay. So hence informal settlements have started around the fringe areas. Okay. So which is impacting the basic facilities of water and sanitation. Or water and sanitation. Such case studies can enrich your answer. यही जाके चिपका दो. आपके 2 नंबर 3 नंबर तो ऐसे ही बढ़ जाते हैं, है ना? Answer has no width, no depth. ठीक है? So cities population is expected to double by 2035. Okay. So hence there is a need for sustainable development. Okay. There is a need for sustainable development. Now when we are talking about urban sprawling, so one concept that we have used here is sprawling. So one concept that we have used here is So sprawling in context of why sprawling is happening, because of rural urban migration. And what else? What else did we write? Multinuclear model, है ना, multinuclear model. But it can also be associated with Lewis Mumford. कैसे? लुइस मम्फर्ड, आइडियल सिटी तो मैंने कोड दे दिया था, बट लुइस मम्फर्ड का मेन कंसेप्ट क्या है जो हम पढ़ते हैं? स्टेजेस ऑफ ग्रोथ ऑफ सिटी याद आ रहा है? ईओपोलिस, पोलिस, मेट्रोपोलिस याद आ रहा है कि पढ़ाई नहीं है? वेरी गुड. मेगालोपोलिस, मेट्रोपोलिस, मेगालोपोलिस, टेरानोपोलिस. So this can be synonymous with megalopolis, metropolis. Stages of growth of city. Okay. Of growth of city. Okay. This can also be unbalanced growth. Unbalanced growth याद आ रहा है कंसेप्ट? आरडीबी का कंसेप्ट, unbalanced growth, right? Hirschman. Okay. Hirschman. Okay. Etc. So what can be some of these solutions? Compact city development. Okay. Solutions can be compact city development. Compact city development. Okay. So in a compact city, the outer limits of the city, they are defined, beyond which the city cannot spread. Okay. So these are the outer limits beyond which the city cannot spread. This is the outer limit. So Toyama, Japan also developed in form of the compact city model. Okay. Toyama city, Japan. Okay. Next, there is also a concept of green belt. So this idea came from UK. Okay. Way back in the last century, mid of the 20th century, okay, it was also witnessing sprawling and conurbations development. So what happened? They proposed this concept of green belt. So in the green belt, only certain activities they are permitted. Industrialization is not permitted, residences may not be permitted, okay. It is only allowed for agriculture, forestry, like that. So this is green belt development. Okay. So there can be compact city development, there can be green belt development. Okay. And there can be definitely intervention in form of stepped migration, stuffer. Okay. Stuffer, stepped migration. Stepped migration. Very importantly, we have the concept of umland city region. Umland city region याद आ रहा है? हाँ. We can use that also here. Okay, so this might be the administrative boundary, but its influence doesn't end at the administrative boundary. Its influence can be further. Okay, it can be further, more along one particular arterial route but less along the other arterial route, but this is the sphere till where its influence is there. Okay, so for that service a person will travel only to this A. Okay, so till here I am willing to travel to the CBD for availing that services, but if I am living here, okay, if I am living here, then possibly I am under the influence of another city. Okay, so this is the umland city region. So if I plan as per the city region, the area of influence or umland, then I can plan better for this city. Okay, then exploring would reduce. Why? Because I can anticipate कि भाई यहाँ से भी कोई आएगा तो क्यों आएगा? Because this is Varanasi. Somebody might visit here because of the religious importance of the city. Okay, somebody might come to Delhi because of the medical services. So if I anticipate this, then I can plan better for transportation, traffic management, I can plan better for education, residential services, all of that. Okay, that can also help me plan better for the satellite towns. So plan better for satellite towns, okay, plan better for even CBD. Simple. So another sustainable solution is planning as per umland city region. Okay. I can use another concept. Okay. Remember Zelensky? Zelensky याद आ रहा है? Zelensky कौन से टाइम पीरियड से है? कहाँ पे? हाँ 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 ठीक, थोड़ा रेडिकल सोशल रेलेवेंस मूवमेंट, करेक्ट. Zelensky याद आ रहा है? So geographer should behave like a diagnostician, architect and a prophet, okay, for resolving the problems. So here also, in the scenario where the urbanization related problems are increasing at such a pace, so geographer should act as a diagnostician, architect and a prophet. Okay, so role of geographer should be like diagnostician, architect and a prophet. In resolving the problems related to urbanization and unsustainable development. I can quote Zelensky here. समझ में आ रहा है कैसे लिंकेजेस बन रहे हैं? ऐसे बनते हैं आंसर में? नहीं बनते हैं, नहीं बनते. क्या दिक्कत आती है आंसर लिखते हुए? ये सब याद नहीं आता. हेरोडोटस कहाँ डालना है, प्लेटो कहाँ डालना है, ये नहीं याद आता. अडकुंडे हाँ. वो एक याद आ गया तो फिर आगे का नहीं याद आएगा. फिर आगे वाला आ गया तो पीछे वाला नहीं आएगा, ऐसे होता है। फिर ये कैसे याद आएगा? हाँ, उतने में तो पेपर ही खत्म हो जाएगा, है ना? उतने में तो 3 घंटे चले जाएंगे, कैसे याद आएगा? एक ही तरीका है, आपकी लेवल ऑफ समरी क्या है ना, उससे फर्क पड़ेगा। लेवल ऑफ समरी जानते हो कैसे होगा? क्लास किया, एक समरी बनाया, थॉट्स की क्लासेस हो गए हैं, राइट? सो फर्स्ट लेवल ऑफ समराइजेशन इज 1 पेज एंटायर क्लास। नेक्स्ट लेवल ऑफ समराइजेशन विल बी जस्ट अ स्मॉल चिट, इतना सा, उसमें उस क्लास के सारे थिंकर आ गए। अब आपको याद रहेगा वो थिंकर का क्या कंटेक्स्ट था, यू विल नॉट राइट एवरीथिंग अबाउट थिंकर, ओके? अनदर छोटा सा चिट, थ्योरीज, आज कौन कौन से थ्योरी पढ़े, उतना ही आएगा बस, इतना सा चिट। अब वो पॉकेट में रख लो या इधर चिपका लो, वेन एवर यू आर रोमिंग अबाउट जस्ट ओपन दैट चिट और उसको पढ़ते रहो। 20-25 बार पढ़ लोगे ना थिंकर, वो ऐसे याद हो जाएगा। एंड वेरी इंपॉर्टेंटली, वेन एवर यू वेक अप अर्ली इन द मॉर्निंग, so I have told you to wake up at 4 AM, I don't know at what time you are waking up, 9-10 बजे, रात भर पढ़ते हैं, सुबह लेट उठते हैं, ऐसा वाला सिस्टम है, वो नहीं हेल्प करेगा। सुबह जल्दी उठो, है ना? सो फ्रॉम 4 AM till maybe 6-7 AM, every day do the same process. Every day it will seem, what is the use, I know the thinker. Do this for another 2 months. Devote that 3 hours only for memorization of theories, thinkers, concept, maybe for GS or optional. Just remember that single summary for the next 2 months. In paper it will come automatically. समझ में आ रहा है? उसके लिए वो चीज़ डेली, एक चीज़ डेली पढ़ो, बट अगले 2 महीने पढ़ लो, एटलीस्ट 1 hour मॉर्निंग आई विल बी रीडिंग दैट समरी शीट एवरी डे टिल मेंस विल कम। हर अगले 2 महीने हर रोज हर दिन वो समरी शीट पढ़ो। एक समरी शीट होगी जो सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट होगी, थॉट्स की होगी, थिंकर्स की होगी, ऐसे होंगे ना 2-3 शीट्स जो आपको पता है यही ब्राउनी पॉइंट है मेरा, बाकी तो सब लिखेंगे, है ना? अनसस्टेनेबल अर्बनाइजेशन पे सब लिखेंगे, पॉपुलेशन ग्रोथ, एल्डरली, सब लिखेंगे, ये मेरे ब्राउनी पॉइंट्स है ना? केस स्टडी की एक अलग समरी बना लो, पता है कैसे? A4 शीट ले लो, यहाँ इंडिया का मैप या वर्ल्ड मैप बना लो, ठीक है? और मैप बना के ना मैप में ही डिनोट कर दो 1 2 3, 1 केरला, 2 पटना, whatever, 3 like that, and on map mark these places. Just write down what is the case study, Kerala, Wayanad case study, okay, just like that, okay, Ladakh case study, Goa case study, like that. And this is just the name of case study, okay? So you have 20-30 case studies of India and for world on a single map, okay, on a single page. Just page that summary sheet in front of you on your desktop, उसको पढ़ते रहो ज्योग्राफी के लिए, समझ गया? केस स्टडीज विल बी मेमोराइज देन, याद हो जाएगा, रट्टे मार लोगे, ठीक? It will take time, but you will be able to recall the thinkers in the mains exam, I know that. Now very important article with respect to population growth and what has been, okay, the scenario of demography and population in India, okay? So the recent article was population paradox in India, population paradox in India, and this is very important because on demography, yes, need not fear, very good January, but मैं पेपर नहीं लिख सकती ना तुम्हारा। कभी भी एक गलती मत करना, मैं बारी बारी रिपीट करती हूँ कि नेवर लीव एनी कंपल्सरी आंसर, ठीक है? वो आपको बहुत हार्म करेगा। okay. So never do that, okay? So population paradox in India. There are different case scenarios with respect to population in India. The first is declining fertility rate. Declining fertility rate, which is around 2 as per the recent NFHS data, okay? So earlier it was around 3.4 children. Okay, when we talk about early 1900s, okay, early 1990s, sorry, early 1990s, okay. Very importantly, fertility rate has declined, but still the population growth continues. population growth continues. The population growth continues. Okay. The population growth is still continuing despite the decline in fertility. So one important factor is the base that we had accumulated in the previous decades. Okay. So in 1970s, 80s, we had accumulated a large base, and still because of which we have the population growth. So because of the large population base accumulated in the past decades, okay, in the past decades. So this is called as population momentum. This is called as population momentum. In case of India, growth is happening because of momentum. Very importantly, we are now, okay, we are moving away from the DTM stage 3. Okay, we are transitioning towards stage 4. Now another case scenario is that we have the demographic dividend. Okay, but that is mostly unskilled and a rapidly increasing elderly population. Okay, rapidly increasing elderly population. So around 65% of the population is under the age of 35. That is why we have the demographic dividend. And by 2030, it is projected that 1 out of every 5, okay, working age person, that would be Indian. Now very importantly, okay, when we take the case scenario with respect to the demographic dividend bracket which the different countries had, okay, or are having. So Japan, end of demographic dividend way back, okay, Italy way back, okay, China more or less has ended that bracket, okay, because of the negative population growth. And in case of India, okay, India it would continue, but the problem is with respect to the skilling. Okay, so maybe you can write down the age bracket. The bracket for demographic dividend would continue till approximately 2055 for India. But the problem is with rapidly increasing elderly population. Okay. On one hand we are having the demographic dividend, but on the other hand we have the rapidly increasing elderly population. Very importantly, to reap the demographic dividend, okay, country needs to create jobs for millions who are entering the job scenario every year. Okay. So India would need to add approximately 8 million jobs every year until 2030 in the current scenario, in the current case scenario. Okay, in the current case scenario. Now let's compare it with China. This is very important case. Demographic transition. For the first time in 23-24, China has now reported negative population growth rate because of a decline in the total fertility rate. So for the first time, China has reported negative population growth rate. Increasing elderly population, impact on the labor force availability, because of which only they took certain measures, 2-child policy, 3-child policy, but that's not working anymore. Okay. Now can you tell me why it is not working anymore? Now see, population growth, it happened, okay, it happens because of different reasons. In case of China, it was government intervention. Yes, correct, people not willing to, but I have already told you some of the theories. Can you relate with which theory which is more applicable here now? DTM तो सभी जगह है ऑलमोस्ट, जहाँ पर भी कम हो रहा है तो डिफरेंट स्टेजेस ऑफ DTM तो है ही है. विच very good, excellent, social capillarity is most applicable here. Why? Because earlier the one child policy, okay, one child policy, that was forced upon, okay, so there were many repercussions, there were feticides etc, that was also the case scenario, but it actually reduced the fertility rates. Now once the couple started having lesser number of children, they learned the importance of that, कि भाई कम बच्चे ही अच्छे हैं, 2-3 हो गए तो कोई बोलेगा UPSC की तैयारी करते हैं, कोई बोलेगा कि मैं तो भाई मुझे तो हीरो बनना है ना. अब मम्मी पापा जो है वो बेचारे लगे ही पड़े हैं, पढ़ा रहे हैं, फिर और पढ़ा रहे हैं और पढ़ा रहे हैं, और सोचे कम बच्चे ही ज़्यादा अच्छे है ना. तो उसके बाद क्या हुआ, फर्टिलिटी रेट्स डिक्लाइन हो गए. नाउ देयर सोशल कैपिलिटी इज इम्प्रूव्ड एंड नाउ इट इज़ अ माइंडसेट दैट व्हाई डू वी रिक्वायर 3-4 चिल्ड्रन, 1 चिल्ड्रन और नो चिल्ड्रन इज गुड. कम बच्चे होंगे तो हम घूमेंगे, लद्दाख जाएंगे, ठीक है, शिमला जाएंगे, घूमेंगे. बच्चे होंगे भी तो भी क्या हो जाएगा, क्यों, why do we need more number of children? There are theories on that also. Okay, why do we need reproduction, why do we need more number of children? One is maybe okay, comfort in the elderly time period कि कोई है मुझे देख लेगा भाई, है ना. Another is emotional aspect, child care, मैं किसी की केयर करके मुझे खुशी मिलती है, ओके, वुमेन का एस्पेक्ट है जैसे थोड़ा सा. तो इसकी भी अलग अलग थ्योरीज थी, बट अब वो सब निगेट हो रही हैं. अब बच्चे कहाँ केयर करने देते हैं, वो 2-3 साल में उनका मोबाइल जो है उनका फ्रेंड हो जाता है ना. सो वो पुराने कंसेप्ट जो है अब निगेट हो गए हैं. Now this is the case scenario of China. So negative population growth, which will definitely impact the labor force. Now entire China's growth trajectory has been because of labor force, surplus labor force only. Okay, since 1970s, 80s, 90s, when there was opening up of the economy, the entire growth trajectory has been because of the availability of labor force. Yes, China did had resources, but the most prominent impact was because of the availability of labor force. डेमोग्राफिक डिविडेंड था, उन्होंने रीप कर लिया भाई, है ना. प्लस अवेलेबिलिटी ऑफ रिसोर्सेस, that was the entire growth trajectory of China. So manufacturing spurred, manufacturing did grew, okay. So one aspect was improvement in the trade, transportation and communication, okay, from Atlantic towards Indian and Pacific Ocean, okay, opening up of the trade routes and all of that, that happened, yes. But why China? Because China had the demographic dividend, cheap labor availability was there, okay, because of which manufacturing spurred on this coast, and additional advantage of resources, okay. So resources है, fertile region है, पानी है, तो एग्रीकल्चर के लिए भी उन्होंने रिफॉर्म्स किए और इसलिए उनका ट्रिकल डाउन हुआ, है ना. But now the problem is with respect to declining labor force availability because of decline in the fertility rates, okay, and increase in the elderly would mean increasing the expenditure on the healthcare, okay, pensions and all of that, right. So this can be the paradox that India might face in the coming scenario, because similarly our total fertility rates are declining, the proportion of population elderly is increasing, okay, it is increasing. It would impact the labor force availability in the coming decades. So that is why we always tend to compare China and India, and very importantly, why China and India? This is the scenario which has happened in the other countries also, but very importantly the absolute population is very much comparable. समझ में आया? So that is why we are now higher in terms of the absolute numbers. हमने अब चाइना को सरपास कर दिया है ना. But this can be the okay paradox that we might face. So this is very important. Okay. सो इंडियाज एल्डरली, एल्डरली पे बहुत बार क्वेश्चन आया, पैराडॉक्स हमने पढ़ लिया, एल्डरली. सो एल्डरली, वेरी इंपॉर्टेंटली सम डेटा एंड स्टैटिस्टिक्स. So elderly population is increasing, okay, and it is projected to be around 190 200 million by 2031. And very importantly, when we divide the demography, okay, across different age brackets, so one is 0 to 15, okay, then up till 64, and then 65 and beyond. So it is projected that by 2050 it is possible that the age bracket, okay, in terms of absolute numbers, the population above 65 might surpass even the age bracket 0 to 15. Now that is a concern because it will lead to inverted pyramid. समझ में आ रहा है क्या हो जाएगा? So this is 0 to 15. By 2050 it is projected that this would increase even much more than this. So this would be kind of this pyramid. That would be a challenge because this is inverted pyramid. Okay. So maybe you can write down this point. By 2050, the population in absolute numbers above ages 65 might surpass the population bracket between 0 to 15. Okay. 0 to 15. So percentage of elderly population, okay, by 2100 might be 36% in India. By 2050 can be somewhere around 25%. Okay. Between 20 to 25% the total elderly population can be there by 2050 in India. That is a huge proportion. 20 to 25% of population in India being elderly. Okay. Now see, whenever the question is on elderly population, you can always add on the challenges with respect to women elderly. आप हमेशा एक ही dimension लिखते हो. Okay, elderly, general elderly, which is fine. You can add on dimension of women elderly because they are dependent. Okay, so women elderly, you can add on the component of differently abled elderly. Okay, you can add on the context of elderly in the coastal areas, in the island areas, in the hilly areas, which are remote areas. There are certain areas in hilly areas, okay, which are not connected by mainland for 6 months. There the challenges of elderly are different. This will give a regional perspective. Okay, ये सब आना चाहिए आंसर में. Elderly, women elderly, differently abled elderly, okay, elderly across different regions, because they require healthcare facilities, transportation, communication. So this is impacted severely in cases of hilly areas like Lahaul Spiti, like parts of Ladakh. They are cut off for 6 months of the year. So providing medical facilities in those areas, remote areas of Uttarakhand, that is very problematic. Okay. The other aspects you can mention, transportation, communication. Communication is also a barrier. Okay. Their mobility is hindered basically. So mobility, migration, all these contexts can be discussed. Then very importantly, when we talk about economic pursuits, second demographic dividend, silver economy, etc., there are limited aspects that is also concentrated in the managerial jobs. Okay. So silver economy, all of this. But we tend to forget that the opportunities and prospects, they are very limited. That is because of their health also, mobility also. Okay. Lack of understanding with respect to the recent developments in the technology, okay, innovation, all of that, that can be a challenge. Okay, so this is clear to us. Okay, then very importantly, when we talk about the mental health disorder, health के ऊपर last year एक question आया है ना? So 13% of the elderly, they face from the mental health disorders. Okay, which can include depression, okay, But there are other aspects of the mental health disorder. Elderly also tend to forget. There are also medical terms like Parkinson disease. Dementia, dementia होता है ना, dementia. Yes, very good. Dementia, dementia. They tend to forget. Alzheimer's is also one type of that only. Alzheimer's, correct, very good. Alzheimer's, Parkinson, dementia. Okay. Now when we talk about the rural areas, so there are highly differentiative symptoms, okay, like found in females who are aged 70 years and above. And now when the life expectancy increases, it would also increase the elderly population beyond 70-80 years. That is what is happening in Japan. Okay. That is what is happening in Japan. Okay. Now very importantly, by 2050, the population aged 80 years and above will also increase. So here there will be higher proportion of the elderly who are differently abled or further suffering from dementia, etc. Okay. So I have already given you data, and this is further projected to increase because of increase in the life expectancy. Okay. So you can see decadal growth in context of total population and elderly. Okay. So this has been more as compared to the population growth of the total population. So maybe you need not remember the data, you can draw the graph. A graph bana lo, okay, elderly population growth and total population growth that we know is declining now. That is significantly declining now. That we know from the recent census. Okay. Data that we are having. So this is elderly growth and this is the population growth, total population growth. So starting from 1950s, and this is the data for 2001 to 2011. Okay. So this is elderly population growth and this is the total population growth. ठीक है बच्चों? Okay. Now very important, this article is very important, and also the last article for today, that is the case study of Bengaluru. So Bengaluru recently witnessed, okay, lot of problems with respect to flooding etc. We have also heard that in news, isn't it so? हर साल ही बेंगलुरु तो न्यूज़ में आ जाता है. कोई बेंगलुरु से है? कभी गए हो? ऐसे प्रॉब्लम फेस किए हैं? उसके लिए बेंगलुरु जाने की जरूरत नहीं है. वो यही होता है. अभी एक हफ्ते में शुरू होने वाली है ये. फिर आधा रिक्शा डूब जाएगा राजेंद्र नगर में, है ना? फिर जा नहीं पाएंगे, रोड नहीं क्रॉस कर पाते हैं, होता है कि नहीं? फिर एकदम से पानी पता नहीं शाम को कहाँ गायब हो जाता है ना? तो ये प्रॉब्लम एक कैसे डेवलपमेंट है? अब रीसेंट डेवलपमेंट है इन द रीसेंट ईयर्स अक्रॉस मोस्ट ऑफ द अर्बन एरियाज. ओके, that is associated with maybe the sprawling effect that we have already discussed with, but it has also got to do with the cities infrastructure. तो यहाँ urban morphology की भी आप बात कर सकते हो. Okay. So planning for the city's infrastructure, like sectoral model, Chandigarh, okay, like Chandigarh. In most of the cities, the old CBDs, the traditional CBDs, okay, they are now congested. We definitely need some solutions. Now see, एक पहले हम समझ लेते हैं, it's not possible to vacate the entire city, कि भाई सब लोगों को बाहर भेज दें, हम पहले पूरा एक डेवलपमेंट करेंगे और फिर आ जाएंगे, है ना, ऐसा नहीं हो सकता. तो what is the possible solution? Maybe redevelopment, overhauling of certain parts, okay, and maybe removing the illegal colonies, okay, some shanty towns they come up, so maybe illegalizing, ठीक है, उनको हटा देंगे, कुछ parts में हम development कर सकते हैं. Or very importantly, we can plan for some other cities and maybe relocate the population there, okay. तो changes तो करने पड़ेंगे हमें in the urban morphology, so that concentric zonation is no more sustainable now, okay. In Bengaluru, or for that matter of fact Delhi, etc., there has been the same problem only. In those areas where there has been overpopulation, so that has resulted into an impact on the infrastructure of the cities, है कि नहीं, वही वाली बात हो गई ना, tyrannopolis necropolis वाली बात हो गई, है ना. So what has happened? Drainage lines are choked, okay. So drainage lines are choked. Loss of vegetation. For example, in case of, okay, Bengaluru, development of IT industry, okay, development of IT industry, loss of vegetation, loss of wetlands. So एक तरीके का कंस्ट्रक्शन बूम हो गया मेट्रोपॉलिटन एरियाज में, टेक्नोलॉजी, पार्क्स, okay, gated communities, societies, etc. Noida used to be much greener during our childhood, but now it is unfortunately just high-rise buildings, okay. Many of them are also illegal in context, okay. So loss of wetlands, loss of vegetation, resulting into urban heat island, okay. The recent reports are that annual land surface temperatures have increased in Bengaluru, okay. Very importantly, what do we witness? We witness loss of wetlands the size of football stadiums in Bengaluru. That has been the land conversion rates, okay. So extreme land use modifications. So land use and land cover changes. So that is called as LULC modification. इस पे एक साल पूछा हुआ क्वेश्चन है LULC modification पे. Okay. So what do we see? We see that, okay, there has been extreme built up from 1970s. You can see this red area is built up area. Loss of vegetation and water bodies, this is clearly visible. These are the spatial temporal maps of Bengaluru. So can we see a lot of loss of built up, loss of the vegetation and increase in the built up? Yes, okay. Maybe draw this, just draw this small map and draw this small map, and here mention built up as this portion, okay. This is built up area, and here you can mention this entire as built up area. This is 1970s, इतना ही याद रख लो, काफ़ी है. And this is 2010. That's it. And one very important figure here in the entire table, you need not memorize everything, okay. So very important statistic, okay, that is in percentage, built up area was only 8%, okay, and vegetative cover was around 70%, let's say approximate it, in 1970s. And now the built up area in percentage as a proportion of the total geographical area of Bengaluru, it is around 60%, and vegetative cover has reduced to 16%. So these two datas we can remember. Okay. I'll repeat again, built up area in 1970s was around 8%, which has increased to about 60%. and vegetative cover was 70% which has reduced to 16%. 15 लिख लो और अच्छे से याद रहेगा, अप्रॉक्सीमेट कर लो 15%, या 16 भी याद रह जाएगा, 8 का डबल 16 हो जाता है ना, तो वहाँ 8 था, अभी यहाँ 16 ही रह गया है, 70 से 16% हो गया. सो दिस इज एन इम्पॉर्टेंट डेटा. So what are the solutions? Solutions can be proposed as, okay, development of the urban morphology infrastructure in terms of blue-green infrastructure. Okay. So that is rejuvenation of the wetlands. Okay, rejuvenation of the wetlands. Very importantly, when we talk about the planning concept, so one of the thinkers said, plan with the people rather than planning for them. ये किसने बोला? Planning with the people rather than planning for them. Harvey? Harvey? Planning for the people rather than planning for, plan with the people rather than planning for them. Okay, go to the ghettos, correct. Go to the ghettos and plan with them rather than planning for them. Correct बोल रहे हो. That was the concept. Yes, correct. Okay, going to the ghettos and planning with them rather than planning for them. Okay. Okay. Any other idea that you know of sustainable development which can be proposed here? Yes, that is happening in Delhi. There was a recent case study. Correct. Correct. Yes. Cleaning up of the rivers. Okay. Yes. Decongestion, all of that. Very good. Any other? Sustainable public transport, correct. Okay. So this was done in Toyama, compact city development along the overhauling of the earlier metro system. Earlier metro system को use करना बंद कर दिया था लोगों ने, क्योंकि elderly population थी टोयामा जापान में, तो वो use नहीं करते थे. तो overhauling हुआ पूरे metro का with the ramps and all of that for the elderly. Taken into consideration कि वहाँ elderly ज़्यादा है ना, तो पूरा overhauling हुआ, तब जाके लोगों ने फिर से metro use करना शुरू किया. So city infrastructure should be, okay, redeveloped taking into consideration demography of that region. तभी तो हम जब बोलते हैं कि भाई अगर हम बात करें किसी भी डिस्ट्रिक्ट की, आप कहीं पोस्टेड हैं, ठीक है, तो डिस्ट्रिक्ट में जो आप प्लान कर रहे हैं that will be completely different from the plan of another district, not even at state level. Why? Because the demography, because the population growth rate, etc. are completely different. Physiography, topography is completely different, isn't it so? So बेंगलुरु का जो सबसे बड़ा प्रॉब्लम रहा है लॉस ऑफ वेजिटेशन, वी नीड टू वर्क अपॉन दैट. ठीक है, बिल्कुल, ड्रोन्स एक्सेट्रा, वेरी गुड. हाँ बताओ. बिल्कुल, वो पूरा एक सोल्यूशन नहीं हो सकता कि सबको घर से ही काम करने को मिले, है ना. वर्क फ्रॉम होम नहीं हो सकता है सबके लिए. कुछ ऐसे जगह हैं जहाँ आपको काम करना ही होगा. जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल अब ये आईटी इंडस्ट्री है ना, और यहाँ पर जितना भी आप मैन्युफैक्चरिंग देखोगे ना, दैट रिक्वायर्स द मैन्युफैक्चरिंग, जैसे मेडिकल इक्विपमेंट्स एक्सेट्रा, जो हम सब वो पीसीबी पे काम होता है ना, पता होगा थोड़ा बहुत तो आइडिया होगा, जो पीसीबीज वगैरह इलेक्ट्रॉनिक गैजेट्स में लगते हैं, जो R&D हो रहा है, लॉट ऑफ दैट इज कंसंट्रेटेड इन बेंगलुरु। तो लैब्स में जाके तो आपको काम करना ही पड़ेगा, ठीक है, जहाँ पे साइंटिस्ट का काम है, डॉक्टर्स का काम है, वो तो जाना ही पड़ेगा। बट इसमें एक सस्टेनेबल सोल्यूशन चाहिए कि वो जो लॉस ऑफ वेजिटेटिव कवर हुआ है, दैट हैज़ टू बी taken into consideration. So revival of the wetlands and all of that, है ना? So that is fine, I think. Okay, so that is all with respect to the today's topics for discussion with respect to these two units, and we have tried to interlink that with the paper 2 also. Okay, so in that case scenario you can use it across the papers. Okay, अच्छा इसमें भी एक important question आता है कि मैंने पेपर 1 में विडाल रैट्जल लिख दिया, हिकेटियस लिख दिया, हेरोडोटस लिख दिया, अब मैं पेपर 2 में लिखूँ या नहीं, शुड आई यूज दिस थिंकर्स अगेन इन पेपर 2? You can always use them, okay, but don't use the same thinkers across the different questions. ये नहीं कि हर आंसर में विडाल ही लिख रहे हो, या फिर हर आंसर में जो है, अब सोशल रेलेवेंस याद आ गया, कुछ याद आ ही नहीं रहा तो हर आंसर में वही चल रहा है, ज़ेलेंस्की याद आ गया और कुछ याद आ गया, वही लिखे जा रहे हैं, है ना? तो उससे एक बड़ा लिमिटेड डायमेंशन आ जाता है, डिटर्मिनिज्म पॉसिबिलिज्म के आगे कुछ याद ही नहीं आ रहा, हर आंसर में वही लिखते जा रहे हैं, है ना? तो नया नहीं बनेगा ना कुछ डायमेंशन आपके आंसर्स में। तो थोड़ा थोड़ा थिंकर्स को, जैसे पेपर मिलेगा ना, जैसे बेल बजती है पेपर मिला, पीछे ब्लैंक पेज होता है ना, रफ पेज, फटाफट से जो जो थिंकर याद आए ना, वो जितने याद आ गए उसी टाइम आएंगे, उसके बाद नहीं आएंगे। तो 1 मिनट के लिए वो टाइम वेस्ट नहीं है, वो आप यूज़ कर रहे हो, जो थिंकर थ्योरी कुछ भी याद आ रहा है, मॉडल याद आ रहा है, वही लिख लो, उसको बाद में यूज़ करते रहो अक्रॉस आंसर्स। ऐसे ही करना, पेपर शुरू करने से पहले फिजिकल ह्यूमन कुछ भी जो याद आ रहा है वहाँ लिख लो और फिर आगे अपना पेपर स्टार्ट करो, ठीक है? चलो, विल मीट अप अगेन इन दी नेक्स्ट क्लास, दैट्स इट। Yes, correct. Vertical gardening is correct. Miyawaki method is correct. Very good. Okay, chalo, let's end the session. We'll meet up again in the next class. Okay, bye bye बच्चों.